I really do love my drives. Yesterday I had a little rant about a deal a couple was presented. So a pizza parlor, yeah, old in his 80s, late 80s, and his children are not in the business, don't even live in the state. So I have to loop them in on negotiations and the offer that they got. And it's a restaurant, so there's a heavy cash component. So they got a fair offer. And one of the things one of the sons said to me was, "Well, everybody hides cash, and isn't this normal? And everybody sells these things at this number." And it's really interesting, the functional silo that somebody has when they're looking at as an exit, and the emotion tied into their exit when they're doing that assessment of an offer. The funny thing is, like the week prior, I was sitting with a bunch of financial planners. So suits, they deal with numbers every day, much bigger businesses. And I kind of said, guys, you got to see the world for what it is. Let me show you what really goes on. So I pulled up all the businesses for sale in the greater Tampa Bay area. And so we pulled that up, and there's like 560. And then I said, well, how many of these do you think have tax returns? And you should have seen the look on the faces of these financial planners. Now, these are people who are dealing with much larger businesses or corporations, where people are generally employees that are contributing to 401ks. They like to say more sophisticated. I like to say, you just don't understand small business. So they're like, well, everybody files their taxes. And I said, well, let me show you what's on the market. So I put in the filter for listings that had tax returns, and it was 18% of that number. And the look of incredulous shock would floor you. And I did it yesterday. It's always one of my go-tos, trying to impress upon a buyer or a seller a good business, and a good business being one that has books and records. That's why when you talk to brokers who deal with small business every day, they go, what do I do to make my business more valuable? Have clean books, have clean books. Of the 10 things we tell you, having clean books and records is one of them, 2 of them, 3 of them. It is so rare that the games aren't played. And we can, the reasons this goes on is legendary. It's been going on since the 80s. It has to do with taxes. It has to do with the way they're treated with banks. It has to do with the commingle of funds. It has to do with seller or business owner, frankly, ignorance and lack of education. And so what's bringing this up on top of the rant I did yesterday? Well, I'll tell you. I had a restaurant owner who 2 years ago, I had brought him an offer on his business. He didn't think it was enough. Major plaza, and moves into a much smaller location, probably 5 miles away, and rebrands, right? And he's trucking along, and then he calls me out of the blue and says, hey, I gotta sell this business. So I go down there, and he's making, books and records are bad. Again, we had to hire an accountant. It took us 2 months to clean up the books, to prove the numbers. Called another friend of mine who owned a restaurant, who's from Germany. Different culture, different process. And those books and records were super clean on that business that he bought. So his expectation on this new one is, hey, we're going to have clean books. It took us 2 months to turn around a P&L that made sense. Saturday, I get a call from the closing attorney. We're doing the lien search, and we find a loan, an EIDL loan. Well, an EIDL loan was given out during COVID. So that's what, 4 years ago? Lots of people took them. Same like everybody took the PPP. And I go, those aren't free money. That's an SBA loan. It came from the SBA fund. You collateralized your business when you did that. So I called the seller. I go, hey, we got to clear this loan. What's this lien? Because there was a chance it had been cleared. But what did he do? He had shut the other business down, thinking he was smart, thinking that lowering the overhead was going to solve his problem. Used the EIDL money and whatever profits he had to pour into the new location. He had to rebuild, but he thought the fixed overhead was lower. It'd be easier. Never paid down the debt on the loan. The business never produced enough income to value it at a greater value than the business. And we can't sell the business now. It's encumbered. He has been pouring money into this business since he did that pivot, putting to the tune of, his words, $2,000 a month just to make payroll. And now his health is spiraling. And I wrote on a post yesterday, first key to digging out of a hole is to stop digging. he kept digging, and he dug himself a really, really, really deep hole, which is now resulting in bankruptcy. So flashback to the pizza guy. I do this for a living, and people form conclusions, and I speak in direct terms, and I do these videos on the rare hope that people are going to object, that sellers and buyers will stumble across me and find that I try and tell the truth at all times and articulate what can and cannot happen in transactions. I don't like to spit raindrops, gobstoppers, unicorns, and rainbows, because they generally don't happen. I tell people the truth. There are no shortcuts. And I said yesterday, there's going to be a lot of carnage of people that are feeling and if you do the research, go to Google and ChatGPT and ask it, what are the amounts of defaults in businesses that are occurring because of EIDL loans? And you're going to get some shocking data, some really shocking data. They're coming home to roost. Those chickens are coming home to roost. And a lot of these business owners are in trouble because now they're older. They're 5 years older than they were 5 years ago. Life happens. Sickness, distress. Think of that 87-year-old guy. Bring him a fair offer. It's got a little seller note. And they're wanting to haggle over the number when their books aren't clean. They can't prove $100,000 of their revenue. And the argument that everybody does, and they're getting upset with me because I'm like, you can't prove what you're saying. You got a lot of warts on this baby of yours. This baby is not pretty. This is an ugly baby. And they take it personal, back themselves into a corner. Pride gets in the way, ego gets in the way, and piss poor prior planning on their part is going to result in some bad outcomes. So I'm seeing a lot of this, just an awful lot of it. And there's lots of root causes. What I like to tell people is, before you ever buy a business, find your tribe of truth-sayers that you trust. Not the guys with the fancy degrees, the guys who are going to tell you the truth when you don't need to hear it, because they're going to keep you honest. In effect, build yourself a little board. Doesn't have to be people in your industry. Doesn't have to be people who know what who come from your business, but wise people. Not smart people, wise people. Not clever people, wise people. Because winning the race comes down to doing the fundamentals, blocking and tackling, and mitigating the uncontrollables. A COVID is an uncontrollable. There's a video somewhere in the internet where I'm going to go back and find it, where I begged people not to take the second PPPs in the EIDL loans. Because I knew when they did that the money wouldn't be spent in the correct manner. Now, if you're self-controlled, and you know what to do, and you put that EIDL loan into the into the bank, and you don't touch it if you don't absolutely need it, then God bless you. That's fine. But the lion's share of people that did that spent that money because they didn't understand the consequences of what they did. And to answer the question, is it possible to prove it? No. The money never made it into the bank account. You can't prove it from a third-party perspective that cash is real. Now, in pizza parlors, you can count boxes, you can sit in the store and watch sales, but there's a risk to that. Then employees start wondering, is he really there? And are you? And here's the other thing: when you think about that, are you really going to trust somebody who committed a theft? You know what I'm saying? I mean, not reporting revenue is against the law, and saying that everybody does it. No, everybody doesn't do it. And as a buyer, the buyer looks at it going, why would I trust the guy? I don't know him. How do I know that I can trust his word? And generally, you can't. There is a statistical data point in our data that people with bad books and records sell for about a half a point or a full point lower, or they don't. Remember, 80% of the businesses out there don't sell. And largely it's because of the piss poor books and records and the inability of the buyer to get access to capital to buy it. So the buyer's coming out of pocket on cash to buy a business. He's got to feel safe in doing so. And by skimming cash, you make it impossible to feel safe, because you've put on record, you're going to sit in front of somebody and say, hey, I lied to the government. That's what you did. That's what you did. So, you know, everybody does it is patently not true. And, you know, if you want to make sure you get the most for it, there's legitimate ways of mitigating taxes other than skimming cash off the top. The carnage I am seeing with people who have this bad habit, it's real. The chicken will come home to roost, and I'm watching some ugly, ugly stuff. So that's the rant for the day, folks.